Hello, everyone. Welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us here on this Wednesday morning, the 22nd of October. We're broadcasting as we always do from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Hope you're all having a wonderful week so far. Today's launch from Vandenberg set to be the first of a pair of Falcon 9 rockets that SpaceX intends to launch today. Coming up this evening is a mission for Hispasat called the SpaceX NG-2 mission, set to launch in just a little under 12 hours from now. We'll, of course, have a dedicated live stream and talk much more about that mission when we get right down to it. But worth noting that there will not be a drone ship out waiting for that Falcon booster, since SpaceX is flying a rare expendable configuration of the Falcon 9 rocket in support of the SpaceX NG-2 satellite. So it'll be more of a stripped down booster from what we're used to seeing, not needing the landing legs, of course, as well. So don't expect to see those on tonight's booster. Regardless, 28 minutes, 38 seconds remaining on the clock here. Of course, given that this is a West Coast venture, our photography team is standing down this morning, getting ready for tonight. If you're not already following the fellows on X, you can find them at their handles that you see here on the screen. Adam is at ABurn NYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr., John is at John Pisani Photo. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook if you yourself are not on X. With about 27 and a half minutes on the clock, let's take a look at the weather forecast as things currently stand. Of course, this mission is set to lift off from the California coastline shortly after sunrise, so the weather loop from NOAA and its GOES West satellite still in the dark at this point in the morning. However, as you can see, things are starting to clear up over the area of Vandenberg, so should be a fairly nice launch for those in the vicinity and in the surrounding states. So hopefully you have a pretty nice view of this rocket as it makes its ascent. It's going to be traveling on a southeasterly trajectory, so hugging the coastline of California and Mexico as it climbs uphill. As we progress towards the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and walk you through the countdown timeline, the milestones that SpaceX still has in front of them as they look to launch their Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg this morning. Stepping quickly through the events we've already passed by, T-minus 38 minutes is when SpaceX launch director made the call for the start of prop load, which began at the T-minus 35-minute mark with the loading of RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene aboard the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen began to flow on board the booster. T-minus 30 minutes is when the first stage helium load began. Same was true on the second stage a few minutes after that. This helium is important, of course, because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Coming up next at T-minus 23 minutes is when the second stage RP-1 loading will wrap up. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down sequence begins. This is SpaceX thermally conditioning the feed lines at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage at the 16-minute mark. 7 minutes out, is when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps for the 9 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the Falcon 9 booster. And that helps to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. T-minus 6 minutes, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. 4.5 out is when the strong back retract sequence begins. SpaceX will open up the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. And here at Vandenberg, it stays in that position up to and through liftoff. 3 minutes before liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute afterwards. And at that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, when we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch call at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Targeting the time you see here on your screen, 7:16 a.m. Pacific, 10:16 a.m. Eastern, or 14:16 UTC for our friends around the world. As we approach 23 minutes before takeoff, I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young for running the technical operations of the broadcast today. Also, big thanks to the 930 of you that are watching along with us live at this point in the countdown. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we cruise on through the remaining bit of the countdown that we still have ahead of us. Our thanks as well go to our wonderful moderators in the chat, Aussie Space Girl and Rick Donner, who are holding it down this morning. Appreciate the both of you. And a thanks to one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, for helping to answer folks' questions in the chat. This and every other live launch opportunity are made possible in no small part thanks to our fabulous channel member community here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Space Coast Rocket Launches, M. Teresa, Sulfur for Lunch, Frankie, Lady Blue NC, and many, many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Taking a look at where this Falcon 9 rocket's going to be flying once it does leave the pad. Talking a little trajectory here. Falcon 9 rocket will lift off from Space Launch Complex 4 East. Right now, SpaceX's only active Falcon pad at Vandenberg, though they did get approval to establish a presence at Slick 6. So that work is now been allowed to move forward per the U.S. Air Force as well as the FAA granting clearance to SpaceX for not only that, but also being able to increase their number of launches up to 100 Falcon rockets over the year. 5 of those can be for Falcon Heavy. Meanwhile, for today's mission, following stage separation, less than 3 minutes after liftoff, the first stage booster will target a touchdown on the drone ship called, Of Course I Still Love You. If all goes well with this booster recovery, this would be the 159th good landing on this particular drone ship and the 522nd good landing for SpaceX so far. SpaceX also interested in recovering the payload fairings that are currently encapsulating its 28 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites. Following a fairing separation, these fairing halves will splash down in the waters of the Pacific Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Once down in the water, they'll be brought aboard a SpaceX recovery vessel, and then it's off to the port of Long Beach, where they will be offloaded and brought over to SpaceX facilities at Vandenberg for refurbishment and turning around for future flights. Just about 19 and a half minutes on the clock. One last little bit of housekeeping here. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space or spaceflight, or would just like to offer a little bit of support for the team this morning, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature to have your comment or query elevated for discussion, assuming, of course, that it is appropriate to be read aloud as part of the broadcast. Not only will you be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, but you'll also be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count. And that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. In the chat, Lisa Eichmann asking if this, not sure if you mean the booster or the fairing halves will be landing on Shannon, but Shannon is actually one of the names of SpaceX's Dragon recovery vessels. So unless they're using it in support of fairing recovery today, then I don't believe Shannon's going to be heading out on this mission. Talking about the payload that is flying today, 28 more of SpaceX's Starlink V2 mini satellites. Of course, with the pair of missions that happened over the weekend, SpaceX crossed the 10,000 Starlinks launched milestone. With the deployment of these 28 satellites, though, SpaceX will be right about at 8,700 Starlink satellites currently on orbit, according to stats maintained by friend of the channel, astronomer, expert orbital tracker Jonathan McDowell. This mission is SpaceX's 95th that features Starlink satellites as the payload heading into low Earth orbit so far this year. As I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, these are the optimized versions of the Starlink V2 minis, which are considerably lighter than their predecessors. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. Built up in Redmond, Washington, they'll be deployed at about 183 miles or 295 kilometers in altitude at a 53-degree inclination. Here's a nice little animation that SpaceX provided during the Starship Flight 11 mission to give you an idea of the version 1.5 satellites compared to the V2 minis flying today and the V3s that will be flying once SpaceX begins operational missions with its Starship rocket. Looking forward to getting some more specs on the V3s. Hopefully that'll come before they actually start flying these. We'll see. Some news for SpaceX recently was the announcement that Muon Space would be partnering with SpaceX and using its mini lasers that were demonstrated on a previous Starlink mission. You can see one of those in this picture here, that Muon Space is going to be integrating the mini laser terminals onto its high-performance Halo satellite bus platform. This will be the first satellite constellation to add the Starlink capability on board its satellites. Here's an idea of what one of those Halo satellites looks like. This rendering of one in relation to a contract that Muon Space won from the Space Development Agency. Talking about the technology that's on the Starlink satellites itself. It was now a little bit of an older update back at the start of the year, which hopefully there will be some additional ones coming in the not too distant future. SpaceX gave a graphical representation touring around the various components of its Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites. We're looking at here is just a general overview of the base of the satellite, displaying its more compact design, of course, featuring the optical space lasers that we were just talking about. SpaceX notes that each one of its V2 mini satellites has 3 of these lasers that operate at about 200 gigabits per second to connect the constellation with that laser mesh, which you can see illustrated in this graphic here. Each of the V2 mini optimized satellites also has an antenna with 5 Ku band phased arrays and 3 dual band Ka band and E band antennas in order to provide its high bandwidth connectivity, as it describes it. I mentioned it in one of the previous slides, but they use those argon Hall effect thrusters, these ion thrusters. Here's another perspective on the dual solar arrays that each of the V2 mini optimized satellites uses. The satellites are also equipped with a set of star trackers to help the spacecraft understand their orientation in space, and 4 reaction wheels that allow for more precise attitude control as well. Just about 12 minutes now away from the launch of the Falcon 9 rocket with 28 of these Starlink V2 minis on board. Appreciate the now 1,600 plus of you who are watching along with us live. Also, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. I see we've got Richard Barris joining us from Kentucky. And we've got plenty of Californians in the chat, given that this is going up from the California coastline. Got Robert G. Fitzhugh Sr. checking in from Palm Coast, Florida. So we've got Yels TR from Kyiv, Ukraine. San Diego guy from Temecula, California. Wisconsin in the house. New York, of course. Ventura. Glad to have you all here with us this morning. Today's Falcon booster that is launching the Starlink 11-5 mission has the tail number B1075 in the SpaceX fleet. It's going to be launching for a 21st time today, which once upon a time would have earned it a spot in the frequent flyers list, but now the bottom of that list has boosters that have flown 23 times. Taking a little trip down memory lane, though, this booster began flying in January of 2023, launching its first mission a group of Starlink satellites on the Starlink 2-4 flight, followed by a batch of demonstrator satellites for the Space Development Agency with their Tranche 0 mission, Tranche 0A to be specific. That was followed up by a series of Starlink missions. You had Starlink 2-9 on May 10th, 5-7 on June 22nd, 6-20 on August 8th, 7-3 on September 25th, 7-6 on October 29th. That was followed up by a pair of synthetic aperture radar satellites for Germany. These reconnaissance satellites, part of the SARA three-satellite constellation. Next up, we have a trio of Starlink missions. Starlink 7-12 on January 29th, 7-16 on March 19th, and 9-2 on June 24th. That was followed up by the Transporter 11 rideshare mission with 116 satellites on board that particular Falcon flight. And then it's off to Starlink land to bring us into the present. 9-17 on September 20th of last year. 9-9 on October 30th, 9-13 on November 24th, 11-13 on December 29th, 11-4 on February 1st, 11-16 on May 23rd, 17-2 on July 17th, and most recently, Starlink 17-9 on September 6th. That brings us up to present day, where in just about 8.5 minutes, this Falcon 9 rocket will launch the 11-5 mission. Taking a peek at the live chat again, I want to thank channel member Michael McGrory for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Michael. Good to see you again this morning. Michael says, thanks again for your explanation of the Starlink nomenclature in shells a few weeks ago. Great info. Well, thank you very much. We try to help educate and entertain as best we can here at Spaceflight now. So certainly appreciate everyone who's taken part of their morning, or if you are watching this on a delay or not live, but after the fact, appreciate you checking out this launch replay. Time now, T-minus 6 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. At this point, the engine chill for the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster is well underway, and SpaceX should be just about at the point of topping off RP1 for its booster. We should also be getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket coming up here in less than a minute.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strong-back retract.
And a beautiful looking sunrise there at Vandenberg. Clear views of the Falcon 9 rocket, some light clouds over the skies. Should be a very nice launch coming up here in less than 5 minutes.
Strong-back retract has started.
With that call, we'll soon be seeing the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up. And then that large truss structure, the transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. There you see the arms opening up. Just under 4 minutes to go.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call there. Stage 1 LOX load. We should hear a similar call regarding the second stage coming up at about T-minus 2 minutes. Our thanks to Virginia Pruitt, one of our wonderful channel members, for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much for the support this morning. T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that call, the Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. We should be seeing some additional venting momentarily. The ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
And you see that venting I was just referring to. SpaceX releasing the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad. Closing on the final minute of the count when Falcon 9 will enter into its automated startup sequence.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that, we're just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to confirm that they are in fact go for launch.
LD is go for launch.
And with that confirmation, we're going to step back on our commentary for the final 30 seconds ahead of liftoff and be back with you on the other side.
30 seconds. -15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And liftoff. Go SpaceX, go Starlink, go Falcon.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Power and telemetry nominal.
Vehicles supersonic. Max Q.
Good calls, good visuals so far in this mission. The rocket passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
Impact chill has started.
That call out there regarding the thermal conditioning of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's upper stage. SpaceX is coming up to a few events in fairly rapid succession next. There will be first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds, followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. Payload fairings currently encapsulating the Starlink satellites will be deployed at about just shy of 3 minutes into this flight.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And back ignition.
Good calls, good visuals there. Those hypersonic grid fins now deploying on the Falcon booster. Fairing jettison is coming up next.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a good look at those 28 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites. The fairing halves will be recovered a little bit further downrange from where the booster is set to land on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. About 3.5 minutes so far into this Falcon 9 flight, all moving along nominally at this point in the mission. Coming up next, at about T plus 6 minutes and 6 seconds, is when the first stage entry burn is set to begin. That burn lasting less than 30 seconds in duration. It will use 3 out of the 9 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the Falcon booster. Those puffs that you're seeing occasionally on the Falcon booster B1075 are the cold gas thrusters, which help the vehicle adjust its attitude or positioning, orienting it in the right, orientation prior to the start of that entry burn. Looks like it's going to top out at about 115 kilometers in altitude this morning. Now starting to make its descent towards the drone ship called Of Course I Still Love You. Meanwhile, the rocket's upper stage continues its climb, now more than 10,000 kilometers per hour in speed. This mission today is also the 550th Falcon 9 rocket launched so far. Just past 5.5 minutes into this Falcon flight. Again, the entry burn is set to begin now in less than 30 seconds.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup. Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Good callouts, good visuals, and a good entry burn, setting the stage for the start of the landing burn coming up just before the 8-minute mark in this flight. You also heard the call out for the safing of the first stage FTS, the flight termination system, no longer needed at this stage in the mission.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage
1
2,
landing burn.
terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good recovery for B-1075, wrapping up its 21st trip to space and back.
And back shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And good callouts, good confirmation of both engine shutdown and a nominal orbit insertion, which means this upper stage will now coast until about T plus 53 minutes and 16 seconds. There will be a brief 1-second burn to circularize its orbit, and then the Starlink satellites on board will be deployed at T plus 1 hour and 8 minutes post liftoff. With a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, we're going to turn next to our mission stats as they currently stand. But first, want to thank a couple folks in the live chat for their support this morning. Thanks to channel member Glenn A for being a member with us at the pad leader level for now 24 months and going strong. Hitting that 2-year mark, saying go for launch before liftoff. And Mrs. Ed3 been a member with us for 17 months at the pad leader level. Very kindly says, my favorite YouTube channel. Turning now to our mission stats. With a good liftoff and landing, that wrapped up the 21st flight for B-1075. This was, as mentioned, SpaceX's 550th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 133rd of the year so far. This is SpaceX's 167th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 157th orbital flight from Slick 4 East for SpaceX, and the 225th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's where the bar chart now currently stands. With launch coming up tonight, SpaceX is poised to tie the total number of launches it achieved in all of 2024 as of October 22nd. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 159th landing of a booster successfully on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. That marked SpaceX's 426th drone ship landing and the 522nd Falcon booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 52nd orbital launch from California, the 140th from U.S. soil, the 152nd from a U.S. rocket company, and the 240th orbital launch around the world. There have been 5 orbital launch mishaps so far this year. Here's where the pie chart now currently stands. As a reminder, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon on your way out the digital door. So that way you'll be alerted when we start our live coverage for tonight's mission, the SpainSat NG2 flight on behalf of Hispasat. That launch coverage from Space Launch Complex 40 set to begin about an hour before liftoff, and you can head on over to our website anytime, spaceflightnow.com. Click the launch schedule tab so that you're kept apprised of what's coming up around the orbital bend. One last reminder, if you want to head over to our 24/7 live stream, which is Launchpad Live, you can keep tabs on the progress of SpaceX's Starship Tower and pad construction, I should say, over at Launch Complex 39A, as well as some other views around the Space Coast, as well as down at Starbase. Those Starbase views courtesy of our friends at Lab Padre. You can actually see some humans on the mound on the left-hand side of your screen in the bottom corner there for a sense of scale of this project. Want to thank our moderators who have been helping us out in the live chat today, to Rick Donner and Aussie Space Girl. See Mark Otto joined us at some point in the broadcast. Good to see you this morning, Mark. Also thanks to channel member Cumulus Granatus for helping answer folks' questions. Big thanks to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of today's broadcast. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. We certainly appreciate your time and attention, and we look forward to welcoming you back in when next we have a launch to cover. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I am Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.